In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But even more haunting than the endless battlefields and the screams of dying worlds are the silences, the absences, the empty spaces where heroes once stood, now occupied only by questions that may never find answers. The Imperium of Man, that sprawling galactic empire spanning 1,000,000 worlds, is built as much upon secrets and mysteries as it is upon adamantium and faith. And among all those secrets, none are more profound, more troubling, or more endlessly fascinating than the disappearances. These are not simple deaths. Death, at least, has a certain finality to it. A body can be recovered, honors can be paid, and the Imperium's endless bureaucracy can file the appropriate paperwork. But disappearances are different. They leave behind voids that the human mind cannot help but try to fill with speculation, with hope, with dread. They create legends that echo across the millennia, whispered in the dark corners of fortress monasteries, and debated in hushed tones by scholars who know that some questions are dangerous to ask too loudly. The galaxy of Warhammer 40,000 is vast beyond human comprehension. Millions of worlds, countless billions of souls, all bound together in an empire that has endured for 10,000 years. In such immensity, one might think that a few disappearances would barely register, would be lost in the statistical noise of a civilization that measures its casualties in planetary populations. But these are not ordinary disappearances. These are figures who shaped the Imperium itself, who led armies that conquered star systems, who stood at the right hand of the Emperor of mankind. When such beings vanish, the absence reverberates through history like the tolling of a great bell. What makes these mysteries particularly compelling is that they exist in multiple layers. On the surface, we have the official imperial records, sanitized and edited by 10,000 years of revisionist history and deliberate obfuscation. The administratum's files are incomplete by design, whole sections redacted or destroyed, leaving only tantalizing fragments. Below that lies the oral tradition, the stories passed down through generations of space marines, the legends that survive in the memories of those who were there, or who heard the tales from those who were. And beneath even that, buried in the deepest archives and known only to the highest echelons of imperial power, lie truths so terrible that they must be kept hidden at all costs. The disappearances we're examining today span the entire history of the Imperium. Some occurred during the Great Crusade, when the Emperor still walked among men and his sons conquered the galaxy in his name. Others happened during the catastrophic civil war of the Horus Heresy, when brother turned against brother and the Imperium nearly tore itself apart. Still others took place in the long millennia that followed, as the Imperium slowly calcified into the dystopian nightmare it has become. Each disappearance is unique. Each carries its own particular weight of tragedy and mystery. But together they form a pattern that speaks to something fundamental about the nature of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. There's a reason why these stories endure, why fans pore over every scrap of lore looking for clues, why new theories spring up with each publication. In a setting where almost everything is known, where even the gods have been catalogued and their domains mapped, these disappearances represent genuine unknowns. They're spaces where imagination can run free, where the community can speculate and theorize without being contradicted by official canon. Games Workshop has been remarkably careful to preserve these mysteries, understanding that some questions become less interesting once they're answered. But these aren't just intellectual puzzles or thought experiments for fans to debate. Within the fiction itself, these disappearances have profound consequences. The absence of the two lost Primarchs shaped the decisions of their surviving brothers, adding an unspoken weight to their councils during the heresy. The vanishing of Jagatai Khan left the White Scars without their father and leader, fundamentally altering their character as a chapter. Leman Russ's departure into the Eye of Terror created the prophecy of the Wolf Time that has driven Space Wolves' actions for 10 millennia. Each absence creates ripples that spread across the galaxy and down through the ages. Consider the sheer scale of what we're discussing. These aren't ordinary soldiers or even ordinary heroes. The Primarchs were the closest things to gods that the Imperium has ever produced. Genetically engineered demigods created by the Emperor himself from his own genetic material and infused with power drawn from the warp. Each one was designed to be the perfect commander, warrior, and leader for their particular legion. They were effectively immortal, capable of feats that defied belief, possessed of intellects that could process tactical information across entire segmentums. For beings of such power to simply vanish suggests forces and circumstances of truly cosmic significance. And it's not just the Primarchs. Entire Space Marine legions have disappeared from history. Fleets numbering hundreds of ships have translated into the warp, never to be seen again. Chapters tens of thousands strong have vanished so completely that even their names have been expunged from Imperial records. The scale of these disappearances is staggering when you stop to consider it. We're not talking about a few hundred casualties or even a few thousand. We're talking about military forces that could conquer entire sectors, led by warriors who had fought since the dawn of the Imperium, simply ceasing to exist. The question that haunts every one of these disappearances is simple but profound. What could make such beings vanish? What force in the galaxy is powerful enough to overcome a Primarch, to destroy a legion so thoroughly that not even wreckage remains, to erase all traces of their existence? The warp itself certainly has that power. The domains of chaos are places where reality itself breaks down, where time has no meaning and space folds in on itself in impossible ways. A fleet lost in the warp might emerge anywhere, anywhen, or never at all. But the warp is indiscriminate in its hunger. It doesn't explain the selective nature of these disappearances, the way certain figures seem to have been specifically targeted. Then there's the question of intent. Were these disappearances accidents, tragic casualties of a galaxy that kills its heroes as readily as it kills its common soldiers? Or were they deliberate, the result of plans laid by beings whose schemes span millennia? The Chaos Gods are certainly capable of such long games, and they've shown their willingness to manipulate events across vast spans of time to achieve their goals. But there are suggestions in the lore that even some Imperial authorities might have had reasons to make certain figures disappear, that not all of these mysteries are the work of external enemies. The timing of these disappearances is also significant. Many occurred at crucial moments in Imperial history, at turning points where the presence or absence of these figures would have had profound consequences. The two lost Primarchs vanished before the heresy, but what if they had been present? Would their presence have tipped the balance one way or another? Would they have joined Horus or stood with the Emperor? Jagatai Khan disappeared in the aftermath of the heresy, taking with him his unique perspective and tactical genius. Layman Russ vanished just as the Imperium was settling into its new post-heresy structure. Each absence comes at a moment where their presence would have mattered, where history might have taken a different path if they had remained. What we're going to explore in this examination is not just the surface facts of these disappearances, but the deeper implications. We'll look at what the official sources tell us, but we'll also consider what they don't say, what gaps exist in the official narrative. We'll examine the theories that have been proposed by fans and hinted at in the lore itself. We'll consider the evidence, circumstantial and otherwise, that might point toward answers. And we'll explore what these mysteries tell us about the Warhammer 40,000 universe as a whole. Each disappearance we'll discuss has its own unique character, its own particular mysteries. Some, like the lost Primarchs, are deliberately kept vague to preserve their mystery. Others, like Jagatai Khan or Layman Russ, have more concrete last known locations and circumstances, but their ultimate fates remain shrouded in uncertainty. Some, like Corvus Corax, have hints about what they became after their disappearance, suggestions that they may still exist in some transformed state. Each case offers its own insights into the nature of the 40k universe and the forces that shape it. The role of narrative in these disappearances cannot be understated. Warhammer 40,000 is ultimately a story, and stories need mysteries. They need unanswered questions to give depth to the setting, to create the sense that there are truths lurking just beyond our comprehension. The disappearances serve this narrative function perfectly. They're concrete enough to feel real, to have weight and consequence, but vague enough that they don't constrain future storytelling. They create a sense that the galaxy is vast and unknowable, that not everything can be explained or understood, that some mysteries will endure forever. But for those of us who love this setting, who have spent countless hours immersed in its lore, these mysteries are more than just narrative devices. They're puzzles to be solved, or at least puzzles to be appreciated in all their complexity. They're invitations to speculate, to theorize, to imagine. What happened to the two lost Primarchs? Where is Jagatai Khan now? Will Leman Russ return for the Wolf Time? Has Corvus Corax become something no longer entirely human? These questions don't have definitive answers, and perhaps they never will. But the act of asking them, of exploring the possibilities, enriches our understanding of the setting and deepens our engagement with it. So let us descend into these mysteries. Let us examine the evidence, consider the possibilities, and try to understand what these disappearances tell us about the Imperium of man and the dark galaxy it inhabits. Some of what we'll discuss is drawn from official sources, carefully documented and cross-referenced. Some is speculation, theories built on hints and suggestions and cryptic remarks scattered through decades of publications. All of it, however, speaks to the enduring power of these mysteries and their central place in the mythology of Warhammer 40,000. The missing are not forgotten, even if their names have been struck from the records. Their absences echo through history, shaping events they will never witness, influencing decisions made by those who never knew them. In the grim darkness of the far future, even empty spaces have weight. The lost Primarchs, the 2nd and 11th Legions. Of all the mysteries in Warhammer 40,000, none is more deliberately maintained, more carefully protected, or more endlessly fascinating than the fate of the two lost Primarchs. Known only by their legion numbers, the 2nd and the 11th, these figures have been erased so thoroughly from Imperial history that even their names are forgotten. In the Grand Hall, where the statues of all 20 Primarchs once stood, 2 pedestals remain conspicuously empty, their features chiseled away, their inscriptions ground to dust. This is not the work of time or neglect. This is deliberate erasure on a scale that only the highest authorities of the Imperium could accomplish. The very existence of the lost Primarchs forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of the Imperium and the Emperor himself. These were his sons, created from his own genetic material, infused with fragments of his power, designed to be the perfect commanders for his great crusade. They were among the 20 greatest warriors the galaxy has ever known, each leading a legion of tens of thousands of space marines. What could they have done that was so terrible, so unforgivable, that even the memory of them had to be destroyed? What crime could be worse than betraying the Emperor and joining chaos, as 9 of their brothers did during the heresy? Because whatever the lost Primarchs did, it was judged more harshly than even that ultimate treachery. The official records, such as they are, give us almost nothing. In the listings of the 20 legions that fought during the Great Crusade, the entries for the 2nd and 11th simply read, "All records expunged from the library," or variations thereof. No homeworlds are listed, no notable campaigns, no battle honors or decorations. Even the colors of their armor have been lost to history. It's as if they never existed at all, except for those 2 empty pedestals and the occasional cryptic reference that slips past the censors. But absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, and the very thoroughness of the erasure tells us something. This level of systematic destruction doesn't happen by accident. It requires coordination across the entire Imperium, orders that come from the very top, enforcement by those who have the authority to make other Primarchs comply. Because that's what makes this mystery particularly intriguing. The other Primarchs, those who survived and remained loyal, know what happened, or at least they knew once, before their memories were suppressed. From the Horus Heresy novels, we get tantalizing fragments of information about how this erasure was accomplished. In one particularly revealing passage, Malcador the Sigillite, the Emperor's right hand and one of the most powerful psychers in the Imperium, confronts Rogel Dawn about the lost Primarchs. It's revealed that Dawn and Robut Guilliman had asked Malcador to suppress the memories of the remaining Primarchs, to make them forget their lost brothers. The reason given is that the knowledge of what happened would have threatened the core ideals of the Great Crusade itself. This suggests that whatever befell the lost Primarchs wasn't just personally tragic, but philosophically challenging to the entire Imperial project. Even more intriguingly, Malcador reveals in this same conversation that the Space Marines of the two lost legions did not share their Primarchs' fates. Instead, they were mind-wiped and integrated into other legions. This was described as an act of mercy, suggesting that while the Primarchs themselves were beyond salvation, their sons were judged redeemable, or at least too valuable to waste. The Ultramarines, always suspiciously large for a single legion, are often speculated to have absorbed many of these lost warriors, though this has never been confirmed. The timing of their disappearance is significant. References in the lore make it clear that both lost Primarchs and their legions vanished before the Horus Heresy. This wasn't a casualty of that great civil war, but something that occurred during the supposedly glorious days of the Great Crusade, when the Imperium was at its height and the Emperor still walked among humanity. Whatever happened to them occurred in what should have been the Imperium's golden age, casting a shadow over that supposedly triumphant era. Various Primarchs, when they think their thoughts are private, or when speaking in carefully guarded moments, drop hints about the lost. Horus, in a vision, sees himself alongside all 20 of his brothers, suggesting that at least in alternate timelines or possibilities, the lost Primarchs existed and had roles to play. Rogel Dawn, during the construction of the Imperial Palace, comes across chambers that were clearly meant for the 2nd and 11th Primarchs, empty rooms in a palace that was supposed to house all the Emperor's sons. The sight troubles him deeply, though his memory of why has been suppressed. Sanguinius, the Primarch of the Blood Angels, makes reference to not wanting a third empty plinth beneath the roof of the hegemon, suggesting that 2 pedestals are already empty. This implies that the fates of the lost Primarchs were known to the other brothers, at least before their memories were tampered with, and that those fates were regarded with a mixture of sadness and fear. Not contempt, interestingly, and not the righteous hatred you might expect if they had simply been traitors or failures. The emotion associated with them seems to be closer to grief or regret. The theories about what happened to the lost Primarchs are as varied as the imaginations of the fans who proposed them. Some suggest mutation or genetic instability, that perhaps the flaws in their gene seed were too severe to be hidden or corrected. The Emperor was known to be working on perfecting the Primarch project, and perhaps not all experiments succeeded. If one or both of the lost Primarchs were physically or mentally unstable, if they were producing Space Marines who were abominations rather than warriors, that might justify their removal from history. It would be a terrible failure of the Emperor's science, something that would need to be hidden to maintain faith in the project as a whole. Another theory points to the Rangdan Xenocides, a series of devastating campaigns during the Great Crusade that nearly brought the Imperium to its knees. References in the lore suggest that entire Space Marine legions were lost during these wars against an alien threat so terrible that even speaking of them is discouraged. If one or both of the lost legions were destroyed fighting the Rangda, if their Primarchs fell in battle against Xenos horrors, that might explain the need for secrecy, not because they failed dishonorably, but because admitting how close the Imperium came to extinction would damage morale and reveal weakness. Perhaps more darkly, some theories suggest that the lost Primarchs discovered truths they weren't supposed to know. The warp, the nature of the Emperor, the origins of the Primarch project itself, these are all secrets that the Emperor kept even from his sons. If one of the lost Primarchs learned something they shouldn't, if they began to question or oppose the Emperor's vision based on that knowledge, that might necessitate their removal, not because they were weak or failed, but because they were too smart, too curious, too willing to question. Leman Russ, known as the Emperor's executioner, is often theorized to have played a role in the fate of at least one of the lost Primarchs. He was known to be sent on missions that other Primarchs weren't trusted with, tasks that required not just martial prowess, but absolute loyalty and willingness to do what others might balk at. If the Emperor ordered one of his sons destroyed, Russ would have been the tool used to accomplish it. The Space Wolves themselves have legends of fighting other Astartes, of wars that are never spoken of openly, that might lend credence to this theory. The possibility exists that the lost Primarchs simply refused to comply with the Emperor's vision. Perhaps one was too compassionate, unwilling to engage in the brutal warfare and xenocide that the Great Crusade required. Perhaps another was too violent, too given to excess or cruelty, even by the brutal standards of the Imperium. If a Primarch's philosophy was incompatible with the Emperor's plans, if they couldn't be brought into line and couldn't be left to pursue their own path, elimination might have been the only option the Emperor saw. There's also speculation about relationships between the Primarchs themselves. Some fan theories propose that one of the lost Primarchs might have been female, the Emperor's daughter rather than son, and that this led to complications. Perhaps a relationship developed between two of the Primarchs that was deemed inappropriate or problematic. Perhaps one of the lost attempted to go their own way, to establish their own empire, rather than serving the Emperor's vision. Any of these scenarios could lead to conflict that ended in tragedy and subsequent cover-up. What makes the lost Primarchs particularly fascinating from a meta perspective is that their existence as a mystery is deliberate and by design. Rick Priestley, one of the original creators of Warhammer 40,000, has stated explicitly that the Lost Legions were created to add depth and mystery to the setting, to create unknowable secrets that would give the universe a sense of ancient tragedy. They were meant to be questions without answers, gaps in the history that players could imagine, filling with their own ideas and theories. This has led to an interesting dynamic in the Warhammer 40,000 community. Unlike many sci-fi settings where fans demand answers to mysteries, much of the 40k fanbase actually prefers that the lost Primarchs remain unknown. There's a recognition that the mystery itself is more interesting than any answer could be, that the speculation and theorizing are part of the fun. Games Workshop has been careful to respect this, dropping occasional hints and crumbs of information, but never explaining too much, never providing definitive answers. Yet there are patterns in what we know, suggestions that point in certain directions, even if they never quite resolve into a clear picture. The lost Primarchs seem to have been judged more harshly than the traitor Primarchs, which suggests their crimes were either of a different nature or occurred under circumstances where leniency wasn't possible. They disappeared during the Great Crusade, not the heresy, which suggests internal problems rather than external corruption by chaos. Their space marines were preserved while they themselves were removed, suggesting the problem was with the Primarchs personally, rather than with their gene seed or their legions. The psychological impact of the lost Primarchs on their surviving brothers should not be underestimated. Even with their memories suppressed, even without conscious knowledge of what happened, the absence leaves its mark. The remaining Primarchs, particularly the Loyalists, carry an unspoken weight. They know that being the Emperor's son doesn't guarantee survival or even remembrance. They know that some sins cannot be forgiven, that some failures cannot be overcome. This knowledge, even when buried deep in suppressed memories, influences their decisions and their fears. Consider the impact on Horus himself. Some theories suggest that knowledge of what happened to the lost Primarchs might have contributed to his fall. If he learned that the Emperor was willing to destroy his own sons when they became inconvenient or problematic, that might have fed into his growing belief that the Emperor saw them all as tools rather than children. The lost Primarchs become a precedent, a proof that the Emperor's love has limits and conditions. For a being as proud and ambitious as Horus, that realization could be corrosive. The integration of the Lost Legion's Marines into other forces raises its own questions. How do you mind-wipe tens of thousands of Space Marines? What technology or psychic power could accomplish that? And how thorough was it? Did any of them retain fragmentary memories of their original legions? Were there Space Marines serving in the Ultramarines or other chapters who sometimes had dreams of a different colored armor, of a Primarch whose face they could no longer quite recall? The human cost of this erasure, the personal tragedies of warriors forced to forget who they were and what they had fought for, is staggering when you consider it. The empty pedestals in the Imperial Palace stand as perhaps the most powerful symbol of these mysteries. Their negative space, absences that draw the eye precisely because they're empty. Visitors to that hall, if any were allowed to see it, would find their attention drawn to those gaps. 19 statues of the greatest warriors the Imperium has ever known, and 2 spaces where statues should stand. The silence of those empty places speaks louder than any amount of propaganda or historical revisionism. They're a wound in the history of the Imperium that has never quite healed. In the end, the Lost Primarchs represent something fundamental about the Warhammer 40,000 setting. This is a universe of secrets and lies, where truth is malleable and history is written by those with the power to control it. It's a setting where not everything can be known or understood, where the past holds mysteries that will never be fully revealed. The Lost Primarchs are the purest expression of this theme. They're questions that will never be answered, tragedies whose full dimensions will never be known, absences that shape the present, even though their details have been forgotten. For those who love Warhammer 40,000, the Lost Primarchs are an invitation to imagination. What were their names? What did they look like? What were their personalities, their strengths, their weaknesses? What colors did their legions wear? What worlds did they conquer? What great deeds did they accomplish before everything went wrong? These questions have no canonical answers, which means every fan can create their own. The Lost Primarchs belong to all of us precisely because they belong to no one, because they exist in that rare space where the official law deliberately steps back and says, "You decide." But within the fiction, within the universe itself, the Lost Primarchs are a wound that has never fully healed. They're the proof that even the mightiest can fall, that even the closest family bonds can be severed, that some betrayals or failures are so profound that the only response is erasure. Every time a Primarch makes a difficult decision, every time they fear they might disappoint the Emperor, the shadow of the lost hangs over them. Not consciously, perhaps, since those memories have been suppressed, but in the deep places of their minds where even psychers cannot fully reach. The Lost Primarchs are a cautionary tale that the remaining sons of the Emperor carry with them, a reminder that they serve at their father's pleasure and that his love, infinite as it may seem, has limits that should not be tested. Jaghatai Khan, the Warhawk. Lost in the webway. Jaghatai Khan, the Great Khan, the Warhawk of Chogoris, vanished into the webway in the year 084 M31, just 70 years after the end of the Horus heresy. Unlike the carefully orchestrated erasure of the Lost Primarchs, Khan's disappearance was sudden, dramatic, and witnessed by his own warriors. They saw him ride into battle against the Drukhari, the dark cousins of the Eldar who dwell in the nightmare city of Komorach deep within the webway. They watched as he pursued his enemy through a shimmering portal, chasing them into the labyrinthine passages between reality and the warp. And then he was simply gone, swallowed by a dimension that humanity barely understands, leaving behind a legion that would spend the next 10 millennia waiting for his return. To understand the significance of Khan's disappearance, you must first understand the man himself. Jagatai was always different from his brothers, always apart. Where other Primarchs sought to build empires or impose order, Khan valued freedom above all else. He was raised among the nomadic tribes of Chogoris, learning to read the wind and the stars, to move with the speed and unpredictability of the steppes themselves. He united the tribes not through conquest, but through respect, earning their loyalty rather than demanding it. This philosophy would shape his legion, transforming them into the fastest strike force the Imperium has ever known. The White Scars, Khan's legion, were never fully trusted by the rest of the Imperium. They were too independent, too willing to operate outside the chain of command, too likely to disappear for solar months at a time while pursuing some enemy across the stars. They weren't empire builders or garrison troops. They were hunters, raiders, the swift blade that struck and vanished before the enemy could respond. This made them extraordinarily effective, but also politically isolated. Khan had few close relationships among his brother Primarchs, with Magnus the Red being perhaps his only true friend among them. During the Horus Heresy, the Khan's independence became a source of speculation and fear. Both sides courted him, both Horus and the Emperor wanting to know which way the White Scars would fall. For a time, even Khan himself seemed uncertain, not because he wavered in his loyalty to the Emperor, but because he despised the lies and manipulation he saw on both sides. He valued truth above almost everything else, and the heresy was built on layers of deception so deep that even a Primarch could not easily see through them. In the end, Khan chose the Emperor, but it was a choice, not blind obedience. That distinction mattered to him. The Khan fought throughout the heresy with characteristic brilliance, using hit-and-run tactics to tear apart enemy formations, appearing where he was least expected and vanishing before the traitors could mount an effective response. He navigated the treacherous politics of Imperium Secundus, that short-lived attempt at creating a backup Imperium on the far side of the Ruin Storm. He fought alongside Rogel Dawn and Sanguinius during the defense of Terra itself, though by many accounts he disapproved of Dawn's purely defensive strategy. Khan always preferred motion to stasis, action to waiting, and the Great Siege tested his patience, even as it tested his courage. After the heresy ended and the Emperor was entombed upon the Golden Throne, Khan continued to lead his legion in the Great Scouring, the campaign to drive the traitor legions from Imperial space and punish those who had turned against humanity. The White Scars were particularly effective in this role, their speed allowing them to catch fleeing traitor forces before they could escape into the Eye of Terror. For 70 years, Khan led his sons in battle after battle, and there's no indication in the records that he was planning to leave or that he saw his end approaching. Then came the campaign in the Yasen sector, and everything changed. The White Scars were engaged in operations against both remnant traitor forces and Drukhari raiders when Khan received reports of a massive Drukhari attack on Coruscant 5. The details of what happened next are fragmentary, preserved in the oral traditions of the White Scars, but never fully documented in official records. What is known is that a mighty Drukhari lord, possibly an Archon of significant power, led a raid that devastated several Imperial worlds. The White Scars responded, and in the ensuing battle, Khan found himself in personal combat with this Dark Eldar leader. The Drukhari are masters of the webway, using it to strike anywhere in the galaxy without warning and then vanish back into their dark city before Imperial forces can respond. They're also among the most cruel and sadistic beings in the galaxy, sustained by the suffering they inflict on others. For a Primarch like Khan, who valued freedom and despised tyranny, the Drukhari would have represented everything he opposed. The fact that they had attacked worlds under his protection would have been a personal affront, a challenge that demanded response. In the heat of battle, as the fighting raged around him, Khan saw the Drukhari Lord retreating through a webway portal. The logical move would have been to let the enemy escape, to count the victory and consolidate gains. But Jagatai Khan had never been governed by cold logic alone. He was a hunter, and the greatest prey had just appeared before him. According to White Scar's legend, he didn't hesitate. He signaled to his first brotherhood, the elite of the Legion, and together they pursued the Drukhari into the webway. The webway is not like normal space. It's a network of passages created by the Old Ones and later expanded by the Eldar, existing in the spaces between real space and the warp. It's a labyrinth of impossible geometry and contradictory physics, where the normal rules of cause and effect don't always apply. Time flows strangely in the webway. Distance is meaningless. 1,000 different pathways branch from every junction, leading to 1,000,000 different destinations. For someone who doesn't know the routes, who lacks the psychic connection to the webway that the Eldar possess, entering it is tantamount to suicide. But Khan wasn't suicidal. He was confident, perhaps overly so, in his ability to track and hunt his prey, no matter where it fled. The White Scars followed their Primarch into the shimmering portal, and then contact was lost. The rest of the Legion, waiting outside, never heard from them again. The portal eventually closed, and no amount of searching revealed any trace of where it had led or what had happened to those who entered. The White Scars have never accepted that their Primarch is dead. In their culture, in the traditions that Khan himself instilled in them, a warrior's duty continues until there is proof of death, and sometimes even beyond that. Without a body, without any concrete evidence of Khan's fate, they maintain that he is still alive, still fighting somewhere in the twisted passages of the webway, still hunting the Drukhari who lured him into that dimensional maze. Every action the chapter takes against Dark Eldar raids is partly motivated by the hope that they might find some clue, some trace that leads them to their missing father. This belief isn't merely wishful thinking or denial. The webway has properties that make survival there, at least for a being as powerful as a Primarch, theoretically possible. Time doesn't flow normally in those passages. A day in the webway might be a century in real space, or vice versa. Khan could have been fighting for what felt like a few years to him, while millennia passed in the galaxy outside. The webway also provides protection from the worst of the warp's influence. Unlike the Eye of Terror, where the barrier between reality and chaos is torn open, the webway is shielded, isolated, relatively safe from demonic corruption. But survival and victory are different things. The Drukhari know the webway intimately. They've lived in it for thousands of years, studying its passages and its secrets. They can navigate its impossible geometry with ease, setting traps and ambushes that would be invisible to an outsider. If Khan entered the webway in pursuit of a Drukhari lord, he would have been on their territory, fighting on ground of their choosing, against an enemy who knew every turn and twist of the battlefield. The theories about what happened to Khan fall into several main categories. The most optimistic, held by many White Scars, is that he is still alive and fighting, waging a one-man crusade against the Drukhari in the depths of the webway. This theory imagines him as an avenging ghost, appearing from nowhere to slaughter Dark Eldar raiding parties before vanishing back into the labyrinth. It's a romantic notion, certainly, and one that fits Khan's character. He would never give up, never surrender, never stop fighting as long as there were enemies to battle. A darker possibility is that Khan is lost, but not dead, wandering the endless passages of the webway in search of a way out that he will never find. The webway is vast beyond comprehension, with more branches and passages than any mortal mind could track. Without a guide, without the psychic affinity that allows the Eldar to navigate it instinctively, Khan might be doomed to wander forever, occasionally glimpsing the real galaxy through portals he cannot open, forever separated from the Imperium he fought to defend. Some theories suggest that Khan found what he was looking for, that he tracked down the Drukhari Lord who lured him into the webway and killed them in single combat. But the price of that victory might have been his own life, or his ability to return. Perhaps he's trapped by some Drukhari curse or technology, imprisoned in Komorach itself, kept alive for the amusement of beings who measure time in millennia and consider torture an art form. For a warrior who valued freedom above all else, such a fate would be worse than death. There's also the possibility, less discussed but still worth considering, that Khan chose to remain in the webway. He was always uncomfortable with the political maneuvering of imperial leadership, always more at home on the hunt than in the council chamber. What if he saw an opportunity in the webway, a way to continue fighting without being bound by the constraints of imperial bureaucracy? What if he decided that he could do more good hunting the Drukhari on their home ground than he could leading his legion in the increasingly stagnant Imperium? It would be a very Khan-like decision, prioritizing action over politics, effectiveness over appearances. The impact of Khan's disappearance on the White Scars has been profound and lasting. Without their Primarch's direct leadership, the chapter has had to chart its own course for 10,000 years. They've remained true to the principles he instilled in them, valuing speed and mobility, independence and adaptability. But there's always been an absence at the heart of the chapter, a missing piece that no amount of glory or victories can replace. Every great deed they accomplish is partly in the hope that somehow, somewhere, the Khan knows of it and approves. The White Scars maintain a tradition called the Great Hunt, sending out expeditions into the most dangerous parts of the galaxy in search of any trace of their Primarch. These aren't just symbolic gestures or ritualistic observances. They're genuine searches, conducted by the chapter's finest warriors, pursuing even the faintest rumors or the most cryptic clues. They interrogate captured Drukhari, seeking any knowledge of the webway's depths and the passages Khan might have taken. They explore webway portals when they find them, mapping the routes and searching for any sign of their father's passing. From a narrative perspective, Khan's disappearance serves several purposes. It removes from the setting a Primarch who would have been difficult to contain or control. Khan would never have accepted the increasingly rigid and dogmatic structure that the Imperium developed after the heresy. He would have chafed against the Codex Astartes, against the restrictions placed on Space Marine chapters, against the entire bureaucratic machinery that came to dominate imperial governance. His absence allows the setting to evolve in certain ways, while preserving his legend untarnished by the compromises that survival in that new Imperium would have required. But it also creates a beacon of hope. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, where the Imperium is beset on all sides and victory seems increasingly impossible, the idea that somewhere out there one of the Emperor's sons still fights is profoundly important. The Khan isn't corrupted like the traitor Primarchs. He isn't dead like Ferrus Manus or Sanguinius. He's just elsewhere, still true to himself and his purpose, still the Warhawk, hunting his prey across impossible distances. That thought sustains the White Scars and inspires all who hear their legends. The relationship between the White Scars and the Drukhari has become intensely personal because of Khan's disappearance. Every Dark Eldar raid on Imperial space is met with White Scars' fury, not just because the raiders are enemies of humanity, but because they might know something about what happened to the Khan. Every captured Drukhari is questioned extensively about the webway, about their lords and leaders, about any legends or stories they might have heard of a human warrior appearing from nowhere to slaughter their kind. The Dark Eldar, for their part, either know nothing or refuse to speak, treating the White Scars' questions with contempt or cryptic amusement. In recent lore developments, particularly with the return of other Primarchs like Roboute Guilliman and Leon L. Johnson, speculation about Khan's return has intensified. If the Lion could sleep for 10,000 years and then awaken, if Guilliman could recover from a mortal wound inflicted by a Chaos Primarch, then surely Khan surviving in the webway isn't impossible. The White Scars believe his return is not a question of if, but when, that there will come a day when the webway will open and their father will emerge, ready to lead them once more in battle against the Imperium's enemies. The prophecy or belief in Khan's return doesn't have the formal structure of the Space Wolves' wolf time, but it exists nonetheless. The White Scars speak of signs and portents, of visions seen by their storm seers, of dreams where the Khan appears and tells them to remain faithful and vigilant. Whether these are genuine psychic phenomena or the collective hope of a chapter that refuses to accept loss is unclear, but the belief shapes their actions and their identity, making them perhaps the most forward-looking and optimistic of all the first founding chapters. The mystery of Yagatai Khan's fate is different from other Primarch disappearances because it's so specific. We know where he went, into the webway. We know why, pursuit of Drukhari raiders who had attacked Imperial worlds. We know when, 084-31. We even know who went with him, the first Brotherhood of the White, Scars. What we don't know is what happened next, and that uncertainty is what makes this mystery so compelling. The Khan is close, separated from the Imperium, not by impossible distances, but by dimensional barriers. Yet he might as well be on the far side of the galaxy, for all the ability anyone has to reach him or learn of his fate. In the end, the Warhawk remains in flight, lost somewhere in the passages between worlds, either still hunting or waiting to return. His absence has shaped his chapter and his legacy, but it hasn't diminished either. If anything, his disappearance has made him larger than life, transformed him from a Primarch into a legend, from a leader into a symbol of eternal vigilance and unwavering purpose. The White Scars ride on, always moving, never still, always hoping that the next battle will be the one where their Primarch finally returns to lead them. Until then, they honor his memory by embodying his principles, being the swift wind that strikes from nowhere and vanishes before the enemy can respond, the hunters who never stop pursuing their prey, no matter how far the chase might lead them. Leman Russ, the Wolf King's Hunt, in the year 211. 31, roughly 2 centuries after the Emperor was entombed upon the Golden Throne, Leman Russ stood before his assembled space wolves during the feast of the Emperor's Ascension. The Great Hall on Fenris was packed with his sons, thousands of the finest warriors the Imperium had ever produced, their voices raised in songs of celebration and remembrance. Bjorn the Fell-Handed, Russ's oldest and most trusted companion, sat beside him as always. The feast had been going well, the ale flowing freely, the warriors trading stories of battles won and enemies defeated. Then Russ stood to speak, and the hall fell silent. What Russ said that day has been preserved in Space Wolves tradition, repeated at gatherings ever since, though the exact words may have been smoothed and shaped by centuries of retelling. His eyes glazed over as if he was seeing something far away, something that called to him from across vast distances. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight it had not held before, a finality that chilled even those warriors who had stood beside him through the worst of the heresy. "In the end, I will return," he said, "for the final battle, for the wolf time." Then, without further explanation, without waiting for questions or farewells, Russ stood and left the hall. He took his personal retinue, his closest companions, the warriors who had fought beside him for centuries, all except one. Bjorn the Fell-Handed was ordered to remain behind, to lead the Space Wolves in Russ's absence, to keep the chapter strong until the day of the Wolf King's return. Bjorn, who had never disobeyed an order from his Primarch, who would have followed Russ into the very gates of hell itself, could only watch as his lord and father walked away into the snows and vanished from mortal sight. Russ led his retinue into the Eye of Terror, that massive tear in reality where chaos bleeds through into the material universe. Of all the places a Primarch might choose to go, this was among the most dangerous. The Eye is a place where the laws of nature break down completely, where time flows in impossible directions, where nightmares become real, and reality becomes fluid. It's the domain of the Chaos Gods, the realm where the traitor legions fled after their defeat, where demons walk freely, and chaos itself shapes the landscape according to whim and malice. To enter such a place voluntarily was either the greatest act of bravery or the greatest act of madness the Imperium had ever witnessed. The Space Wolves have spent the last 10,000 years debating what Russ was thinking that day, what vision he saw, what mission he believed required him to walk away from everything he had built. The most common belief, preserved in their sagas and spoken of in their halls, is that Russ went in search of a way to heal the Emperor. The master of mankind was entombed on the Golden Throne, his body broken, his mind trapped in an eternal struggle to hold back the forces of chaos and keep the Astronomicon lit. But he wasn't dead, merely dying, caught in a twilight between life and death that had lasted for 10 millennia and might last for 10,000 more. According to Space Wolves' legend, there exists somewhere in the galaxy an artifact called the Tree of Life, whose fruit has the power to heal any wound, cure any ailment, even restore the nearly dead to full life. The legend is ancient, predating even the Imperium, and whether such a thing truly exists or is merely myth is unknown. But Russ believed, or at least the Space Wolves believed that he believed, and so he went in search of it. Not into the depths of Imperial space, where one might expect such a mythical object to be hidden, but into the Eye of Terror, suggesting that wherever the Tree of Life might be found, its location was somehow connected to or accessible through that warp-torn realm. There are other theories, of course. Some suggest that Russ went into the Eye not in search of something, but in pursuit of someone, specifically the traitor Primarchs who had fled there after their defeat. During the heresy, Russ had been ordered by the Emperor to bring Magnus the Red to Terra for judgment, after Magnus violated the Emperor's edicts against sorcery. That mission had gone catastrophically wrong, manipulated by Horus into becoming an attempt at execution rather than arrest, and resulted in Magnus's fall to chaos and the destruction of Prospero, the homeworld of the Thousand Suns. Some believe Russ never forgave himself for how that played out, and that he went into the Eye seeking to finish the job properly, to find Magnus and make him answer for his crimes. The idea of Russ hunting the traitor Primarchs in their own domain has a certain appeal. Russ was known as the Emperor's executioner, the one called upon when other Primarchs needed to be brought to heel. He had fought Angron to teach him a lesson about tactics and strategy. He had nearly come to blows with Lionel Johnson over questions of honor and protocol. If any of the Emperor's sons was equipped to walk into the Eye of Terror and hunt the traitors on their home ground, it was Lem and Russ. His fury, his tactical cunning, his absolute refusal to yield or compromise, all these traits would serve him well in such an endeavor. Yet there's something that doesn't quite fit with this theory. If Russ was simply going hunting, why the portentous farewell? Why the specific promise to return for the final battle for the Wolf Time? Those words suggest not just a mission, but a destiny, not just a hunt, but a prophesied return tied to the fate of the Imperium itself. The Wolf Time, in Space Wolves tradition, is the end times, the final confrontation between the Imperium and the forces of chaos, when everything that can burn will burn, and the only question will be who stands at the end. Russ's words suggest that he saw something of the future that night, some glimpse of what was to come, and knew that his role in it required him to leave. The fate of Russ's retinue, those warriors who accompanied him into the Eye, is as unknown as Russ's own fate. They were the finest of the Space Wolves, veterans of countless campaigns, warriors who had fought through the entire heresy at their Primarch's side. If they survived the transition into the Eye, if they remained uncorrupted by the warp's influence, they would have been a formidable force. But 10,000 years is a long time, even for Space Marines. The Eye of Terror is a place where mortality itself becomes negotiable, where warriors can be sustained by chaos in states of undeath or transformation. But whether Russ's companions remain true or fell is impossible to know. There is one confirmed survival from Russ's disappearance, and its existence is itself mysterious. At some point after Russ's departure into the Eye, his armor was found, not damaged in battle, not bloodied or broken, but simply found, as if he had removed it and left it behind. This armor, sacred to the Space Wolves as one of the few tangible connections to their missing Primarch, was recovered and is now kept in the chapter's holiest sanctum. But finding the armor without the warrior raises more questions than it answers. Did Russ remove it by choice? Was it taken from him? Did he transform into something that no longer needed such protection? The Space Wolves maintain a tradition they call the Great Hunt, sending out expeditions into the galaxy's most dangerous regions in search of their Primarch. This isn't merely symbolic. Every generation of Space Wolves produces warriors who dedicate themselves to this quest, studying every scrap of information about the Eye of Terror, questioning captured Chaos worshippers, following even the faintest rumors or visions that might lead to Russ. They don't expect to find him in the Imperium proper. They understand that he's beyond the reach of normal search methods, but they hunt nonetheless, maintaining readiness for the day when he will return. The prophecy of the Wolf Time is central to Space Wolves' culture in a way that shapes everything they do. They believe the end times are coming, that there will be a final battle between the Imperium and Chaos, and that Russ will return to lead them in that ultimate confrontation. Every battle they fight is preparation for the Wolf Time. Every warrior they train might be one who stands beside Russ in that final hour. This apocalyptic certainty gives the Space Wolves a particular character, making them simultaneously fatalistic and defiant, accepting that doom is coming, but determined to meet it on their feet with weapons in hand. Interestingly, recent events in the lore have lent credence to the idea that the Wolf Time might be approaching. The return of the 13th Company, Space Wolves, who were lost in the warp during the Horus Heresy and emerged during the 13th Black Crusade, was interpreted by many as a sign. These warriors had been time-displaced, caught in the strange flows of the warp, where 10,000 years had passed in the galaxy, while only decades or centuries had passed for them. Their return, still loyal despite their long isolation, still faithful to Russ despite everything, was seen as a portent. The opening of the Great Rift, that massive warp storm that has split the galaxy in two, has further convinced many Space Wolves that the Wolf Time is at hand. If ever there was a time when the Imperium needed all its greatest heroes, it's now. The galaxy burns, demon worlds multiply, and the forces of chaos press their advantage everywhere. The Imperium is beset as never before, fighting for survival on 1,000 fronts simultaneously. If the Wolf Time is real, if there truly will be a final battle where the fate of humanity is decided, surely this is that time. Yet Russ has not returned. The Space Wolves watch and wait, fighting with the courage of the damned because they believe their Primarch will return to lead them when the need is greatest. But with each passing year, with each new crisis that threatens to overwhelm the Imperium, the question becomes more pressing. If not now, then when? What could be worse than the current situation that would finally trigger Russ's prophesied return? Or was the prophecy simply a way for Russ to give his sons hope, something to believe in during the dark times he knew were coming? The psychological weight of Russ's disappearance on the Space Wolves cannot be overstated. Unlike some chapters that have grown distant from their Primarchs, viewing them as legendary figures from a bygone age, the Space Wolves still feel personally connected to Russ. They tell stories of him as if he just left yesterday. They swear by his name and call upon his memory in battle. Most significantly, they refuse to accept that he's gone permanently. This creates a unique dynamic where the chapter is simultaneously dealing with the reality of his absence and maintaining faith in his eventual return. Some within the Imperium, particularly among other Space Marine chapters and Imperial authorities, view the Space Wolves' belief in Russ's return as naive or even harmful. They argue that the chapter should accept his loss and move on, that waiting for a savior who may never come is a form of weakness, But the Space Wolves would counter that their faith in Russ is what makes them strong, that knowing their father will return gives them reason to endure when all seems lost, to fight on when victory seems impossible. Whether this faith is wisdom or delusion may ultimately be beside the point. It defines who they are. There's an interesting parallel between Russ's disappearance and the way he lived. Throughout his life, Russ was defined by his loyalty to the Emperor and his willingness to do whatever was necessary to protect the Imperium, regardless of personal cost. He was the executioner, the one who carried out the hardest missions, who made the difficult choices that others couldn't or wouldn't make. His departure into the Eye, whether in search of the Tree of Life or in pursuit of traitor Primarchs, fits perfectly with this characterization. He went alone into the dark places because someone had to, because he believed it was necessary, because he was Leman Russ, and that's what Leman Russ did. From a narrative perspective, Russ's disappearance serves several functions. It removes from the setting a Primarch who would have been difficult to fit into the increasingly bureaucratic and rigid Imperium that developed after the heresy. Russ was too wild, too unpredictable, too willing to follow his instincts rather than orders. His absence allows the Space Wolves to develop their own traditions while still maintaining a connection to their Primarch through the promise of his return. It also creates a powerful hope for fans and characters alike, the belief that when things get truly dire, the Wolf King will return to save the day. But there's a darker possibility that lurks beneath all the legends and prophecies. What if Russ is dead? What if he found what he was looking for in the Eye of Terror and paid the ultimate price for it? What if he's not waiting for the perfect moment to return, but is instead beyond all returning, his body lost forever in the impossible geometries of the warp? The Space Wolves refuse to consider this possibility, treating it as heresy to even suggest that Russ might not return. But from an outside perspective, 10,000 years is a very long time to be gone, with no word, no sign, no confirmation of survival. Even darker, what if Russ found something in the Eye of Terror that changed him? The warp is corrosive to both body and soul. Even Primarchs are not entirely immune to its influence, as the fate of the traitor Primarchs proves. If Russ has spent 10,000 years battling in the Eye, what toll might that have taken? Would the warrior who eventually returns be the same Russ who left? Or would he be something different, something changed by his long exile in the realm of chaos? The Space Wolves would say their faith in Russ is so strong that no corruption could touch him. But faith and reality don't always align in the Warhammer universe. There's also speculation about Magnus the Red's involvement in Russ's fate. The two Primarchs were bitter enemies, their conflict stretching back to the burning of Prospero and Magnus's fall to chaos. Magnus, now a demon Primarch in service to Tzeentch, has knowledge and powers that even other Chaos Lords lack. It's been suggested in some sources that Magnus knows what happened to Russ, that the Crimson King has some information about his brother's fate that he keeps to himself. Whether out of spite, or as part of some larger game, or simply because the truth is too terrible or too complex to share easily, Magnus remains silent on the matter of his brother's whereabouts. The imagery of Russ's departure, walking into the snow and vanishing, has become iconic in Space Wolves culture. It's recreated in art and sculpture, referenced in their sagas, used as a metaphor for the warrior's path. The idea of the lone wolf walking away from everything he built to pursue an impossible quest resonates deeply with the chapter's self-image. They see themselves as following in his footsteps, walking into the darkness because someone must, fighting impossible battles because victory is not the only measure of success. In the end, Leman Russ remains one of the Imperium's greatest mysteries. A Primarch who walked away from everything, from his chapter and his sons, from the relative safety of Imperial space, from all he had built and fought for, driven by vision or necessity into the Eye of Terror. He made a promise that he would return for the final battle, for the Wolf Time, when the Imperium needed him most. The Space Wolves hold to that promise like a lifeline, believing with absolute certainty that their father will keep his word. Whether he can, whether he even still exists to try, remains one of the great unknowns of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. But until proven otherwise, until his death is confirmed beyond all doubt, the Space Wolves will continue to watch and wait, to hunt and search, to prepare themselves for the day when the snows of Fenris part and Leman Russ, the Wolf King, returns to lead them one final time. Corvus Corax, the Raven's transformation. A year to the day after locking himself in his tower on Deliverance, Corvus Corax emerged. Those who saw him reported that he looked haggard and gaunt, as if he hadn't eaten or slept during his self-imposed isolation. His eyes, always penetrating, now seemed to see through everything they touched, looking past the material world to something darker beneath. He spoke only 2 words, the famous last, recorded statement of the Raven Lord, nevermore. Then he walked to a waiting shuttle, set its course for the Eye of Terror, and departed, never to be seen again in Imperial space. But that's not where the story ends. Of all the missing Primarchs, Corvus Corax has perhaps the most disturbing and fascinating fate. Because unlike the others, whose disappearances are complete mysteries, there are hints, suggestions, even confirmations that Corax still exists, but changed in ways that challenge the very definition of what a Primarch is. The Raven Lord who entered the Eye of Terror was consumed by guilt and seeking redemption through penance. What emerged from that crucible was something far more terrifying than what went in. To understand Corax's transformation, you must first understand his guilt. During the Horus Heresy, the Raven Guard were nearly annihilated at the Dropsite Massacre on Istvan Fov, one of the greatest betrayals in Imperial history. Corax led his warriors into what they thought would be a straight fight against the traitors, only to find that 4 legions they thought were loyalists were actually in league with Horus. The Raven Guard were surrounded and slaughtered. Only a fraction of the legion escaped, led by Corax in a desperate 98-day running battle across Istvan V's Black Sands. Corax returned to Terra broken, not in body, but in spirit. His legion, once tens of thousands strong, was reduced to a few thousand survivors. They couldn't be rebuilt through normal means. The process of creating Space Marines was too slow, and the heresy was burning across the galaxy with no end in sight. Corax went to the Emperor and was granted access to the deepest vaults beneath the Imperial Palace, to the genetic laboratories where the Primarchs themselves had been created. There, he found the technology to accelerate the gene seed maturation process, to create Space Marines in weeks instead of years. The resulting warriors were called Raptors, and initially they seemed perfect. Faster, stronger, smarter than normal Space Marines, they allowed Corax to rebuild his legion's strength with incredible speed. But the Alpha Legion, in one of their most successful acts of sabotage, had infiltrated the Raven Guard's ranks. They corrupted the gene tech, introducing flaws that wouldn't become apparent until the Raptors matured. The warriors that Corax had created, his sons twice over, began to mutate. Some grew additional limbs or sensory organs in wrong places. Others devolved into barely sentient monsters. All were in constant pain, their bodies betraying them at the genetic level. Corax did what he believed he had to do. He administered the Emperor's peace to every one of the mutated Raptors personally, ending their suffering with his own hands. Hundreds of warriors who had looked to him as father and leader, who had trusted him with their very genetic code, he executed. The psychological weight of that action, combined with the guilt over Istvan V and the knowledge that he had failed his legion twice over, drove Corax into the isolation of his tower. For a full year he remained there, wrestling with demons that were entirely internal. When he emerged and departed for the Eye of Terror, most assumed it was suicide. The Eye is not a place where one goes expecting to survive. It's the realm of chaos, where reality bends to the will of malevolent gods, where every moment of existence is a battle against forces that seek to corrupt or destroy. For a Primarch carrying the weight of guilt that Corax bore, It must have seemed like appropriate penance to walk into hell itself and fight until death finally claimed him. But death didn't claim Corvus Corax. Instead, something else happened. Something that speaks to the true nature of what Primarchs actually are beneath their flesh and armor. In the Eye of Terror, freed from the constraints of normal reality, exposed to the raw stuff of the warp, Corax began to change. The mutations were not corruption in the chaos sense. Rather, they were a return to something more fundamental. Corax discovered what he truly was. Not a purely material being, but an entity born of the warp, a creature of psychic power and wrath, bound into physical form by the Emperor's science. The exact process of Corax's transformation is not fully documented, but the results are clear from later accounts. He became something the chaos forces in the Eye call a demon, though that term doesn't quite capture what he truly is. Corax transformed into a being of living shadow, able to exist partially in the warp and partially in reality, shifting between states as needed. His form became fluid and terrifying, sometimes appearing as a vast whirlwind of blades, sometimes as a flock of ravens, sometimes as a shadowy figure barely recognizable as human. His ability to move unseen, which had always been preternatural, became absolute. And then, transformed into this new state of being, Corax began his true work. He hunted. Specifically, he hunted the traitor legions and their Primarchs, stalking them through the Eye of Terror with the patience of eternity and the fury of the damned. The Word-bearers, who had been instrumental in turning the Imperium against itself, became his primary targets. Reports from Chaos forces speak of a shadow that appears without warning, slaughtering entire warbands before they can respond, leaving behind only bodies with their throats torn out. Perhaps most significantly, Corax confronted Lorgar, the demon Primarch of the Word-bearers, and one of the principal architects of the heresy. In a confrontation that took place on a demon world within the Eye, Corax appeared as a nightmare-given form, a thing of shadows and blades and countless ravens, and attacked Lorgar with such fury that even that mighty demon was forced to flee. Before Lorgar escaped, closing the portal behind him, Corax swore an oath that he would hunt down and kill every traitor. Primarch, that his vengeance would be eternal and absolute. This transformation of Corax raises profound questions about the nature of Primarchs. If Corax could become this shadowy hunter by accessing his true nature, what does that say about the other Primarchs? Were they all beings of the warp bound into flesh? Are the physical forms they wear simply shells, prisons of sorts, that constrain their true nature? If so, what might the other Primarchs become if they were exposed to the warp's energies in the same way Corax was? The implications are staggering and deeply unsettling. From an Imperial perspective, if they knew of Corax's fate, it would be deeply troubling. A Primarch who has transformed into something that Chaos worshippers identify as a demon, even if he fights against Chaos, represents a dangerous erosion of boundaries that the Imperium has tried to maintain. The Imperium's doctrine holds that humans and demons are fundamentally different, that one cannot become the other without corruption. But Corax suggests otherwise, that the line between mortal and immaterial is more permeable than official doctrine acknowledges, especially for beings as powerful as Primarchs. The Raven Guard, if they knew what their Primarch had become, would face a crisis of faith. They venerate Corax as the liberator, the warrior who freed the oppressed and fought against tyranny. To learn that he had transformed into something that even Chaos forces recognize as demonic in nature, even if he uses that nature to fight against Chaos, would challenge their entire understanding of their chapter's identity and purpose. It's possible that this knowledge is exactly why Corax has never returned to Imperial space, why he confines his hunting to the Eye of Terror. He may believe that what he has become would horrify his sons more than inspire them. Yet, there's something profoundly fitting about Corax's transformation and his chosen path. He was always the liberator, the one who freed those in bondage and punished their oppressors. His early life on Lycaeus, organizing slave revolts and overthrowing tyrants, defined his character. Now, transformed into a being of shadow and vengeance, he's doing the same thing on a cosmic scale. The traitor legions and demon primarchs are the ultimate oppressors, beings who would enslave all humanity to the whims of chaos. Corax hunts them, liberating those they would enslave, one kill at a time. The nature of time in the Eye of Terror means that Corax's campaign could be simultaneously brief and eternal. For him, it might feel like he's been fighting for a few years or decades. For the traitor legions, his hunting might have spanned millennia, a constant threat that appears without warning and vanishes before counterattacks can be organized. The word-bearers in particular have learned to fear the shadows, knowing that at any moment the Raven Lord might appear and exact his revenge. There's a bitter poetry to the fact that Corax, who felt such guilt over creating the mutated raptors, has himself become a being that some would classify as an abomination. He condemned his sons for mutations they didn't choose, for transformations forced upon them by sabotage. Now, he has willingly accepted, or perhaps been unable to resist, a transformation that is far more radical than anything that happened to the raptors. Whether this irony is lost on Corax, or whether it torments him even in his transformed state, is unknown. The question of whether Corax could return from what he's become is fascinating to consider. The other missing primarchs like Russ and Khan are absent but presumably unchanged at their core. If they return, they would be recognizable as themselves, perhaps aged or weary, but fundamentally the same. But Corax has transformed into something else entirely. If he ever left the Eye of Terror, if he ever tried to return to the Imperium, would he even be able to maintain a physical form? Would his sons recognize him? Would he recognize himself? Some fan theories suggest that Corax's transformation might be reversible, that if he left the Eye of Terror and re-entered normal reality, the warp energies that sustain his changed form would dissipate, and he would return to being a purely physical Primarch. But there's no evidence for this, and indeed the opposite might be true. Corax might have become so dependent on the unique conditions of the Eye that leaving would be fatal, or at least extremely painful. He might be as trapped in the Eye now as Khan is in the Webway, unable to leave even if he wanted to. The Raven Guard maintain some traditions that suggest a deeper knowledge of their Primarch's fate than official records indicate. They speak of Corax as still serving the Emperor, still fighting the Imperium's enemies, just in ways and places that most cannot see or understand. This could be simple faith, a refusal to accept that their father is lost, but it could also be based on fragmentary visions or psychic impressions passed down through the chapter's librarians, hints of what Corax has become and what he's doing in the shadows of the Eye. From a narrative standpoint, Corax's fate is one of the most interesting among all the missing Primarchs, because it's not a mystery in the traditional sense. We know what happened to him. The question isn't where is he, but rather what has he become, and what does his transformation mean? His story raises questions about identity, about the cost of vengeance, about whether one can fight monsters without becoming monstrous, about the true nature of the Primarchs, and whether they were ever really human at all. There's also the question of how long Corax can sustain his campaign. Even in his transformed state, even with eternity to work with, the traitor legions are vast, and the Eye of Terror is infinite. Can one Primarch, no matter how powerful, no matter how transformed, truly make a difference against such odds? Or is Corax's hunt ultimately futile, a gesture of defiance that will continue forever without ever achieving its goal? Perhaps that's the point. Perhaps Corax doesn't expect to win, doesn't expect to kill all the traitors, but fights on anyway because that's what he does, because vengeance is all he has left. In the end, Corvus Corax is lost but not gone, transformed but not corrupted, hunting eternally in the dark spaces between reality and nightmare. His story is one of the most tragic among all the Primarchs because unlike the others whose fates are uncertain, we know that Corax is trapped in a cycle of vengeance that may never end. The guilt that drove him into the Eye has not been absolved. It's simply been channeled into endless violence against those he holds responsible. Whether this is penance or damnation, whether Corax has found peace in his hunting or is more tormented than ever, remains unknowable. But somewhere in the Eye of Terror, the Raven Lord flies still, his shadow falling across traitors and demons alike, never more to return, but never forgotten. Lion L. Johnson, The Sleeping Knight. Awakened. For 10,000 years, the Dark Angels held their greatest secret. Deep within the rock, their mobile fortress monastery, past chambers that only the highest-ranking members of the chapter could enter, buried beneath layers of security and psychic wards that would kill any intruder instantly, Lionel Johnson slept. Not dead, as most of the Imperium believed. Not vanished without a trace like Khan or Russ. Simply sleeping, his wounds healed, his body preserved in a perfect stasis, watched over by the mysterious Watchers in the dark, and known only to the Emperor himself, until the day came for him to wake. That day came during the Arcs of Omen campaign. The Lion's eyes opened. The first of the Primarchs, created to lead the Emperor's First Legion, stirred from his millennia-long slumber. But he awoke not in the rock, not surrounded by his sons, but in a strange mirror realm that the Watchers called home, a reflection of his lost homeworld Caliban. And when he finally returned to the material galaxy, he found an Imperium transformed beyond recognition, fighting for survival against odds that might have seemed insurmountable even to him. The story of how the Lion came to sleep and how his disappearance was kept secret for so long is one of betrayal and tragedy on a scale that few events in Imperial history can match. During the Horus Heresy, Lion had fought loyally for the Emperor, leading his Dark Angels against the forces of chaos with strategic brilliance that matched any of his brothers. But he had also made enemies, had been distrusted by some of his fellow Primarchs for his secretive nature and his collection of forbidden weapons and technologies that even the Emperor hadn't wanted widely known. When the heresy ended and the Lion returned to his homeworld of Caliban, expecting to find his forces ready to join in the pursuit of the fleeing traitors, he instead found rebellion. Luther, his oldest friend, the man who had found him in the forests and raised him to leadership, had turned against him. Half the Dark Angels' Legion, those who had been left behind on Caliban while the Lion campaigned across the galaxy, had been corrupted by whispers of chaos and resentment at being left behind. They opened fire on their returning brothers. What followed was a battle that literally tore a planet apart. The Lion confronted Luther in single combat while their sons killed each other in the ruins of what had once been their shared home. Brother fought brother, former comrades trying to kill each other with all the skill and fury that only Space Marines can bring to bear. And at the height of the battle, Luther, empowered by chaos but not entirely controlled by it, struck the Lion down. The blow was not immediately fatal, but it was grievous, and the Lion fell. At that moment, with victory seemingly in Luther's grasp, the Chaos Gods, who had been watching, decided they had lost. The Imperium hadn't fallen during the heresy. The Emperor was entombed, but not dead. The traitors were fleeing to the Eye of Terror. One more victory for Chaos in the ruins of Caliban wasn't going to change the war's outcome, so they sent a warp storm to rip the planet apart, punishing Luther for his failure to kill the Lion completely, destroying what remained of the Dark Angels' homeworld. When the storm cleared, Caliban was gone. All that remained was an asteroid that the Dark Angels would call the Rock, the section of the planet where their fortress monastery had stood, preserved by ancient force fields and now serving as their mobile headquarters. Luther was found alive, but mindless, muttering about the Lion being taken away by the Watchers, about how he would return one day for forgiveness. The other Dark Angels who had turned traitor were scattered across the galaxy by the warp storm, becoming the fallen that the Dark Angels would hunt obsessively for the next 10 millennia. But there was no sign of the lion. The official story, the one that even most Dark Angels believed, was that he had been killed in the battle with Luther, his body lost in the destruction of Caliban. The chapter mourned, built monuments, told stories of his greatness, and moved on as best they could. But the innermost circle, the highest leaders of the chapter, knew differently. They had found the secret chamber where the Watchers in the Dark had taken their Primarch. They saw him sleeping, his wounds healed, his body preserved in some state that was neither life nor death, and they kept that secret with paranoid zeal. For 10,000 years, the existence of the sleeping lion was one of the most closely guarded secrets in the Imperium. The Dark Angels went to extraordinary lengths to maintain it. They killed anyone who got too close to discovering the truth. They manipulated records, destroyed evidence, and maintained layers of deception so complex that even trying to unravel them was dangerous. This obsessive secrecy, combined with their hunt for the fallen, gave the Dark Angels a reputation as being among the most secretive and potentially untrustworthy of all first founding chapters. The reasons for keeping the lion's survival secret are complex. Partly it was shame, admitting that their Primarch lived but would not wake, that he had been struck down by one of his own sons, would have been humiliating. Partly, it was fear of what the Inquisition or other imperial authorities might do if they learned the truth. A sleeping Primarch would be an irresistible prize for those who sought power or knowledge. But mainly, it was hope. The Dark Angels believed that the lion would wake when the time was right, when the Imperium needed him most, and they wanted to control that awakening rather than leaving it to others. The Watchers in the Dark, the mysterious diminutive aliens who had been on Caliban since before the lion arrived there, played a crucial role in all of this. They had taken the lion's body, healed his wounds, and placed him in a chamber that existed somehow outside normal reality. These beings, whose nature and motivations remain mysterious even to the Dark Angels, seemed to understand things about the lion that even the Emperor might not have known. They protected him, maintained him, and waited with the patience of beings for whom time has little meaning. When the lion finally woke, it wasn't because of anything the Dark Angels did. It wasn't because some prophecy was fulfilled or some specific condition was met. He simply opened his eyes in the realm the Watchers called home, a mirror of Caliban as it had been before chaos corrupted it. And in that place, the lion discovered truths about himself, about the nature of Primarchs, about the role he was created to play. The specifics of what he learned in that mirror realm remain unclear, but when he emerged, he was changed, older looking, wiser seeming, carrying new weapons including the Emperor's shield. The lion's return to the material galaxy was dramatic and immediate. He appeared on a world being overrun by forces of chaos and saved it with nothing but his own strength and the warriors he managed to gather. He didn't immediately reveal himself to his chapter or to the wider Imperium. Instead, he began wandering, appearing where he was needed, fighting battles that needed fighting, saving worlds that were about to fall. Legends spread of a mysterious warrior, sometimes called the Cowled Giant, sometimes the Unforgiving Knight, who appeared from nowhere, saved the day, and vanished again. This behavior was very unlike the lion of old. The first Primarch had always been among the most strategic, the most calculating, the most concerned with long-term planning and careful positioning of forces. This new lion seemed to operate more on instinct, going where he felt he was needed rather than where tactics would dictate. Some of this might be explained by the fact that he was initially alone, without his legion, trying to figure out what had happened to the Imperium in his absence. But it also suggests that his time asleep or his experiences in the mirror realm had changed him at a fundamental level. Eventually, the lion revealed himself to his sons, and their reunion was complicated. The Dark Angels worshipped their Primarch, have spent 10,000 years living according to principles they believe he would approve. But they've also spent those millennia keeping secrets from each other, conducting a shadow war against the fallen that has sometimes compromised their effectiveness as a fighting force. The lion's return forces them to confront these decisions, to answer to someone who can judge whether they made the right choices. Some accounts suggest he's not entirely pleased with what he's found, that he sees the obsessive secrecy and the hunt for the fallen as having gone too far. The lion's reunion with his brother Robute Guilliman is also significant. Guilliman returned first, awakening from his own stasis and taking on the role of Lord Commander, trying to hold the Imperium together through sheer force of will and organizational genius. Guilliman is a builder, an administrator, someone who solves problems through structure and planning. The lion is a warrior and a hunter, someone who solves problems through violence applied with precision. They need each other, but they don't always agree, and their different approaches to imperial governance create interesting tensions. What makes the lion's story different from the other missing Primarchs is that it's not really a disappearance at all, at least not in the same sense. The lion was always there, sleeping in the heart of the rock, protected and preserved. His absence was enforced by the Watchers and by his own body's need to heal from Luther's betrayal. Unlike Khan or Russ, who actively went somewhere and chose to leave, or the lost Primarchs, who were removed by imperial decree, the lion's absence was more like Guilliman's, a mortal wound followed by stasis, a waiting period that happened to last for 10,000 years. But his return raises as many questions as it answers. Why did he wake when he did? What did the Watchers in the Dark show him during his time in the Mirror Realm? What does he think of the Imperium he's returned to, this dystopian nightmare that bears little resemblance to the dream he fought for during the Great Crusade? And perhaps most importantly, why did the Emperor keep the secret of his survival? If the Emperor knew, and the evidence suggests he did, why didn't he tell anyone? What purpose was served by allowing the Dark Angels to think their Primarch was dead? The lion's personality and approach to warfare make him uniquely suited for the challenges the Imperium currently faces. He's a master of combined arms warfare, of using all available resources in perfectly coordinated strikes. He's also someone who understands secrets and shadows, who knows that sometimes the most effective way to fight an enemy is through methods that can't be spoken of openly. In the current Imperium, where enemies strike from every direction and conventional tactics often aren't enough, the lion's approach is exactly what's needed. His collection of ancient and forbidden weapons, something that made other Primarchs distrust him during the heresy, has become invaluable. The lion has access to Dark Age technology that even the Adeptus Mechanicus has forgotten, weapons that can turn the tide of battles that seemed unwinnable. He's not afraid to use these weapons, not constrained by the religious taboos that prevent others from employing such tools. This makes him extraordinarily dangerous, but also potentially problematic for an Imperium that has become deeply suspicious of innovation and change. The lion's story is still being written. Unlike the other missing Primarchs, he's returned and active. But his long absence, the mystery of where he really was, and what happened to him during those 10,000 years, remains significant. He was missing from the Imperium's history during all the crucial turning points that shaped it into what it is today. He didn't participate in the debates about the Codex Astartes. He wasn't there when the Imperium became a theocracy, worshipping the Emperor as a god. He missed the entire age of apostasy, the wars of faith, the countless other crises that defined post-heresy imperial culture. He's an anachronism, a relic from a different age, trying to operate in a galaxy he no longer fully understands. For the Dark Angels and their successor chapters, the lion's return is both vindication and judgment. They were right that he lived, right to keep the faith, right to believe he would return. But they must now account for their actions to the Primarch they were trying to honor. Some of what they did in his name will likely meet with his approval. Other decisions, made out of desperation or paranoia, or the simple degradation of principles over 10 millennia, may disappoint him. The tension between the lion and his sons as they navigate this new relationship is one of the most interesting dynamics in current 40k lore. In the end, Lionel Johnson's disappearance and return represents something unique among all the missing Primarchs. He didn't vanish into the warp or the webway. He didn't go on a quest or pursue a vision. He fell in battle, was preserved by mysterious aliens, and slept for 10,000 years until the time came for him to wake. His absence was not permanent, but postponed. Not an ending, but an intermission. And now he's back, ready to lead his sons once more, carrying the weight of 10 millennia of sleep, but also the perspective that comes from having missed all the mistakes and compromises that shaped the modern Imperium. Whether that perspective is an advantage or a liability remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: the lion is once more on the hunt, and the enemies of the Imperium should fear his awakening. Conclusion and final mysteries. The disappearances we've explored in this examination represent some of the most enduring and fascinating mysteries in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. From the deliberately erased, lost Primarchs to the returned lion, from Khan, lost in the webway, to Corvus Corax, transformed into a being of shadow and vengeance, each vanishing carries its own weight of tragedy and significance. These aren't just stories about where people went or what happened to them. They're narratives about sacrifice and transformation, about the costs of duty and the price of guilt, about what happens when even the mightiest of warriors face challenges that exceed their strength. What unites all these disappearances, despite their different circumstances and outcomes, is that they fundamentally shaped the Imperium. The absence of the two lost Primarchs created a shadow over the Great Crusade, a reminder that even the Emperor's greatest creations could fail or be lost. The vanishing of Khan left the White Scars without their father, but with a prophecy to sustain them. Russ's departure created the legend of the Wolf Time and gave the Space Wolves an apocalyptic certainty about their purpose. Corax's transformation showed that Primarchs might be more than they appear, that under the flesh lies something profoundly otherworldly. And the lion's long sleep proved that even death isn't necessarily final for beings of such power. These mysteries matter to the setting in ways that go beyond simple storytelling. They create gaps in the history where imagination can flourish. They provide hope that missing heroes might return when needed most. They demonstrate that in a universe as vast and ancient as Warhammer 40,000, not everything can be known or explained. Some questions will never be answered, some doors will never be opened, some truths will remain forever beyond reach. And that unknowability is part of what makes the setting so compelling. For those of us who love this universe, who have spent countless hours exploring its lore and debating its mysteries, these disappearances are invitations to engage deeper with the setting. Every new novel or codex might contain a hint, a reference, a tiny piece of information that sheds new light on old questions. The community's theories and speculations become part of the experience, enriching the official lore even when they contradict it. We are all, in a sense, searching for the missing Primarchs, hunting for Russ and Khan, wondering what Corax has become and whether he can ever return. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the most mysterious disappearances in Warhammer 40,000, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. These videos take a huge amount of research and time to put together, pouring through countless sources to bring you the most comprehensive coverage of these fascinating topics. Your support helps me continue creating this content and diving even deeper into the lore you love. Drop a comment below with your own theories about what happened to these missing figures, or what mysteries you'd like me to explore next. The discussion is as much a part of this as the video itself, and I love hearing your thoughts and perspectives. The galaxy of Warhammer 40,000 is a place of endless war and darkness, where hope is a precious commodity and heroes are as likely to fall to tragedy as to triumph. But it's also a place where legends never truly die, where the missing might return, where even in the grim darkness of the far future, there remain stories worth telling and mysteries worth exploring. The Primarchs who vanished didn't simply cease to exist. They became legends, symbols, promises of returns that might or might not ever come. And in a universe as bleak as this one, sometimes the promise is enough. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the shadows of Imperial history, exploring the fates of those who walked away from the light of the Astronomicon and into the unknown. Whether they'll ever return, whether they even still exist in forms we would recognize, remains to be seen. But until then, we remember them, we tell their stories, and we keep watch for any sign that they might one day come back to the Imperium that needs them more than ever. Until next time, stay vigilant, honor the Emperor, and never forget those who went into the darkness so that humanity might endure.